a planet that existed for billions of years without us. There were no cities, no roads, number buildings, no technology, and no human presence of any kind. For most of Earth's history, the planet belonged entirely to nature, a world shaped only by natural forces. Volcanoes erupted across vast landscapes, releasing molten rock that reshaped continents over and over again. Entire regions were destroyed and reborn in cycles that lasted millions of years. The Earth's surface was never stable. It was constantly moving, shifting, and transforming. Mountains rose slowly as tectonic plates collided beneath the surface. Valleys formed where the land cracked and sank. New oceans opened, while others disappeared forever. The planet was alive in a very different sense, not because of humans, but because of constant geological change. The atmosphere itself was different as well. In earlier periods of Earth's history, the air was not what we know today. It slowly changed over time, shaped by volcanic gases, oceans, and evolving life forms. And life did exist long before humans, but it was not the life we recognize today. For hundreds of millions of years, Earth was ruled by enormous creatures that no longer exist. Forests were filled with giant plants and strange ecosystems. Oceans were home to massive prehistoric animals, and the land was dominated by species that eventually disappeared forever. Everything was wild, everything was untamed, and everything followed the natural laws of survival. There was no observer, no witness, no consciousness looking at the planet and trying to understand it. The Earth simply existed on its own. Across continents, vast forests stretched endlessly. Some of them survived for millions of years without interruption. Trees grew, died, and regenerated without ever being seen by human eyes. Rivers carved deep paths into the land, slowly shaping entire landscapes over unimaginable periods of time. Deserts formed where ancient seas once existed. Ice ages came and went, covering the planet in glaciers that moved like slow oceans of ice. Everything changed, but nothing was guided. There was no plan, only natural forces interacting over time. Storms were more powerful, lightning struck vast empty lands, and oceans rose and fell with immense energy. The Earth was not peaceful in the way you imagine nature today. It was dynamic, unpredictable, and often destructive. And yet, through all of this chaos, life continued to evolve. Slowly, over millions of years, life forms adapted, changed, and diversified. From microscopic organisms in ancient oceans to massive creatures that ruled prehistoric Earth, life kept moving forward. But still there were no humans, no awareness of the planet itself, no maps, no names for places, no history being recorded, only existence. Then, something extraordinary happened. A new species began to emerge. Humans. At first, they were fragile, small groups of early humans struggling to survive in a dangerous world. They had no control over nature. They were part of it, not above it. Fire became their first great discovery. It gave them warmth, protection, and the ability to survive colder climates. Gradually, they began to expand. They moved across continents, adapting to different environments. Rivers became pathways. Mountains became challenges. Forests became shelters and sources of food. And slowly, something began to change. Unlike any species before them, humans started to reshape the world intentionally. They built shelters. They created tools. They learned to cooperate in larger groups. They began to understand patterns in nature. Time passed. Small settlements became villages. Villages became cities. And cities eventually became civilizations. The Earth, which had once existed without human influence for billions of years, was now being transformed at an accelerating pace. Forests were cleared. Rivers were redirected. Landscapes were reshaped not by nature alone, but by human design. Entire ecosystems changed. And for the first time in Earth's history, one species began to dominate the planet. But this transformation also came with consequences. The balance that had existed for millions of years began to shift in ways never seen before. Nature was no longer the only force shaping Earth. Humanity had become a second force, and together, they began to define the future of the planet, a future that was no longer only natural but shared. Between Earth's ancient history and the brief, rapidly expanding story of humanity,